The first thing that killed the honeypot theory was not a malware sample. It was a developer's machine. Not the machine itself, a record of it. Hostname, country, browser credentials, source code logins, payment platforms, local development servers, localhost 3000, localhost 5173, React, Vite. Those ports do not belong to ordinary web browsing. They belong to someone building software. And that was the point. The campaign did not need to breach a company directly. It needed a developer to believe a coding test was real long enough to open the repository, install the dependencies, and run the project. By the time we understood what we were looking at, the backend had exposed 857 compromised workstations across 90 countries, with 241,764 credential records. The question from our previous report was dead. This was not a decoy built for researchers. This was real blood on the wire. This is the fake interview. I'm Volhax from Red Asgard. Episode 1. Real blood on the wire. And the next victim would not look unusual. They would look like every other developer trying to get paid. A message, a call, a repository, a project that needed to run locally. The 858th victim was not a mystery person in the database. The 858th victim was the next developer who had not yet been reached. To understand how a developer's machine ended up in that database, you have to start before the credential dump, before the backend, before the victim count. You have to start with the message. It arrives through a professional channel, LinkedIn, GitHub, Upwork, Behance, Telegram, sometimes through a mutual contact, sometimes through a polished recruiter account, sometimes through someone presenting as a founder, strategist, or business development lead. The company looks plausible enough. Not famous, not obviously fake. That matters. A famous brand invites scrutiny. A small startup does not. The pitch is ordinary. Remote work, blockchain project, front-end help, smart contract integration, wallet work, a short technical interview. The kind of thing a developer sees every week. Then come the credibility signals. A website, a deck, a GitHub organization, a LinkedIn profile with a professional headshot, a claim about funding, a calendar invite. None of these prove anything, but together they create enough surface area for the target to stop treating the interaction as hostile. The first call has technical issues. The camera does not work. Or the recruiter can only text. Or the connection is bad. So the call becomes voice only. Sometimes the attacker will not demo the project on their own machine. Sometimes they ask the developer to clone the repository instead. Sometimes they say the team wants to see how the candidate reasons through setup issues in real time. It sounds annoying. It also sounds like work. That is what makes the lure effective. The attacker is not asking the developer to do something absurd. They are asking the developer to do something normal inside a situation where speed and cooperation are rewarded. Clone the repository. Install the dependencies. Run the app. Share your screen. Let's debug it together. That is the trap. The fake interview is not just a lure. It is an execution environment. The developer opens the project in the same environment they use for real work. The same editor, the same browser profile, the same saved sessions, the same SSH keys, the same package manager credentials, the same wallet extensions, the same cloud console cookies. That is what the malware wants. Not a clean sandbox, not a burner machine, not an empty virtual environment. A real workstation with real work on it. Because a developer's laptop is rarely just a laptop. It is a source code terminal, a build system, a credential store, a deployment console, and sometimes a bridge into every organization that developer serves. The attacker does not need to know in advance which key will matter. At scale, probability does the work. Compromise enough developers, and some of them will hold access to something far larger than themselves. A few days before we found the victim records, we had published a report we did not want to write. The infrastructure looked too perfect. The servers were standardized. The exposed services were consistent. The same kinds of ports appeared across hosts. The layout looked less like a messy criminal operation and more like something deployed from a template. We tested the usual cracks. They held. That was the problem. Most of the time, when adversary infrastructure resists testing, the conclusion is simple. The operators are disciplined. But this was not only discipline. The outer layer looked strangely clean. A real operation usually has dirt in the corners, a forgotten debug route, a half-configured dashboard, an old admin panel, a backup file, a credential left in a script. You do not always find those things, but when you test enough infrastructure, the mess is usually somewhere. Here, the front-facing layer did not give us much, so we had to consider the possibility that we did not like. Maybe the infrastructure was a honeypot. Maybe it was counterintelligence. Maybe someone wanted researchers to touch it, test it, burn methods against it, and walk away with the wrong story. That sounds paranoid until the evidence is incomplete. Then paranoia is just a placeholder for a missing explanation. So we left the question open. Was this Lazarus attributed infrastructure that happened to be unusually disciplined? Or was someone using Lazarus-shaped infrastructure to watch the watchers? Good threat intelligence is not pretending to know. Sometimes the honest finding is, this does not add up yet. That was where the previous report ended. Then the back end answered. The mistake was assuming the whole system was as disciplined as the front door. The victim-facing servers had been hardened. The usual cracks held. But the operation had another layer, a management and data layer used to collect, organize, and retrieve what the malware had taken. That layer was not built with the same care. We are not going to narrate exact request paths, campaign identifiers, endpoint names, parameter names, or reproduction steps here. That belongs in sanitized form in a companion technical note. The important fact is this. When we reached the operational layer, it returned real victim records without requiring operator authentication. At first, we treated the data as suspect. We had to. If you have just spent days asking whether infrastructure might be staged, you do not get to abandon skepticism the first time something dramatic appears. A good fake can contain dramatic evidence. A good fake can contain host names. A good fake can contain timestamps. A good fake can contain credentials that look plausible at first glance. So we look for the thing fake datasets rarely get right. Mess. The data had it. Machine names that did not follow a pattern. Countries that matched the messy distribution of remote software work. Browser records that mixed personal accounts, developer tools, payment services, freelance platforms, crypto wallets, and local development environments. Source control logins next to banking sites. Google accounts next to package ecosystem traces. Local development ports sitting beside ordinary browsing history. Localhost 3000. Localhost 5173. React. Vite. That detail mattered because it did not describe ordinary web users. It described developers who had been building and testing software on the same machines that were compromised. A fake dataset can imitate structure. It has a harder time imitating the accidental mess of real machines. The victim profile matched the lure. Developers, freelancers, people recruited through fake work, people likely to open unfamiliar repositories because unfamiliar repositories are part of the job. The honeypot theory did not survive contact with that data. This was not a museum piece staged for researchers. It was a working theft operation. The phrase credential theft sounds smaller than this was. It sounds like someone lost a password. That is not the right model. A developer workstation is not an ordinary endpoint. It is where source code lives. It is where cloud sessions live. It is where package tokens live. It is where SSH keys live. It is where .env files live. It is where internal dashboards stay logged in because logging in again is annoying and work has to get done. A single compromised developer can expose a startup, a client, a repository, a deployment pipeline, a cloud account, a wallet, a payment processor, or an internal tool that was never meant to face the internet. The campaign did not need to target every company directly. It targeted the people who held keys to those companies. That is why the numbers mattered. 857 workstations is not just 857 people. It is 857 possible bridges. Some bridges lead nowhere useful to the attacker. Some lead to a personal GitHub. Some lead to a wallet. Some lead to a production cloud account. Some lead to private repositories for an organization the attacker never selected as a target. The malware did not have to understand the difference. It collected. It did not evaluate. It did not ask whether a password belonged to a side project or a bank, whether a token opened a toy repository or a national payment system, whether a browser session belonged to a freelancer or the company that freelancer served. It took what the machine held. That was enough. And because the lure was a coding test, the campaign naturally selected for people whose machines were worth stealing from. The attack surface was not a vulnerability in one product. It was the ordinary workflow of software work. There is a point in an investigation where the question changes. At the beginning, the question is, what is this? Then, how does it work? Then, how far does it reach? But when you find real credentials for real people exposed through adversary infrastructure, the question becomes different. What do we owe the people in the data? That is not a philosophical question. It changes what you do next. Curiosity is not enough. A researcher can justify probing malicious infrastructure to characterize a campaign. A researcher can justify collecting indicators, malware samples, and infrastructure relationships. A researcher can justify confirming whether exposed data is real. But once real banking credentials are in view, once real account records appear, once the victim population is confirmed, the work has to narrow. You do not keep pulling because the dataset is interesting. You do not read people's private lives because the attacker made them accessible. You do not turn victim exposure into research trophies. You characterize enough to prove the harm, report through appropriate channels, preserve what is necessary, and stop short of becoming another party unnecessarily processing stolen data. That is where formal reporting entered the story. At an early threshold, after confirming exposed banking and credential data, we moved the findings into official reporting channels. As the scale grew and the technical picture expanded, we supplemented those reports with additional findings. Those reports did not mean the investigation was complete. They meant the harm threshold had been crossed. In security storytelling, reporting often becomes a clean plot point. A report is filed. The story moves on. In real life, it is less satisfying. You may not know whether anything will happen quickly. You may not get a useful response. You may not know whether the right institution receives the right detail in time. You may still have to keep working because the technical facts are incomplete and victims are still exposed. But reporting matters because it creates a record outside the researcher's own notes. It also forces discipline. What exactly are we claiming? What did we observe? What are we inferring? What can we prove without disclosing victim data? What should never be published? Those questions became part of the investigation. They are also why this audio version is deliberately limited. We will explain the campaign. We will explain the tradecraft. We will explain the defender lessons. We will not narrate a walkthrough for accessing stolen data. The story does not need to teach abuse to be true. Credential theft was not the end of the chain. That matters because InfoStealer can sound like a one-time event. Malware runs, browser passwords are uploaded, the attacker moves on. This campaign had more depth than that. During the investigation, we found a separate remote access component tied to AnyDesk. It gave the operators a way back into compromised machines. We are not going to read configuration values, hard-coded secrets, exact server details, or the installation sequence here. The operational point is enough. The stealer answered what they took. The remote access tooling answered how they could come back. That changes the risk model. A stolen browser password is bad. Persistent remote access is worse. With remote access, an operator can return after the first theft. They can wait for the victim to log into new services. They can observe behavior. They can install additional tools. They can use the victim's machine as a foothold or proxy. They can harvest again after the victim changes passwords but fails to remove the access path. The campaign was not merely collecting old secrets, it was preserving future opportunity. That also helped explain the infrastructure. The front-facing servers were disciplined, the back end was not. The remote access component showed post-theft intent. The victim records showed scale. The operator-facing layer showed organization. The lower-level control channels showed that this was not just a web panel with stolen data sitting behind it. There was active command and control behavior below the visible surface. The story had moved from one question to another. Not, is this a trap? But, how much damage had this operation already created before anyone saw the full shape of it? A honeypot would have meant we were the target. This meant the victims were. The number 857 sounds final. It is not. It is only the number we could characterize from the data we reached during that window. The campaign did not stop being dangerous because we counted part of it. The fake recruiters did not need a new idea. They already had one that worked. Find developers, create believable companies, offer work, move the conversation to a technical interview, send the repository, ask them to run it locally, let the workstation do the rest. The 858th victim is not a specific person we are naming. The 858th victim is the next developer who treats the request as ordinary. That is the uncomfortable part. The defense is not only better malware detection, it is changing the way developers handle stranger code. Do not review unknown coding tests on your daily machine. Do not use your real browser profile. Do not mount SSH keys, cloud credentials, wallet extensions, or password manager sessions into the environment. Do not assume a repository is safe because the company website looks plausible. Do not assume a recruiter is real because the LinkedIn profile has a professional headshot. Do not assume a voice-only call is harmless because the person sounds like they know the project. Make the interviewer demo the project on their own machine first. Use disposable environments. Treat dependency installation as code execution. Treat editor configuration as code execution. Treat the coding test as hostile until it earns trust. That advice sounds extreme only if you have not seen what this campaign collected. After you have seen it, it sounds late. By the end of this phase, the question from part 3 was dead. The victims were real. The credentials were real. The infrastructure was operational. The campaign was not a theory. But this is not where the story began. It did not begin with a backend returning hundreds of records. It did not begin with a remote access component. It did not begin with formal reports, country counts, or credential totals. It began the way modern software work often begins. A repository, a dependency install, a project that looked legitimate enough to open, a developer trusting a folder long enough for the folder to act first. In the next episode, we go back to that first box. The fake contractor, the malicious project, the editor configuration, the JavaScript that called home, the timing signal that revealed active campaigns, the payload chain that showed this was not a one-off scam, but part of something already built to scale. Because the victim data answered one question: what happened? The repository answers another: how did it start? You have been listening to The Fake Interview, a Red Asgard narrative series on the Contagious interview campaign and the investigation that followed it. A companion page for this episode includes a sanitized timeline, defensive checklist, and technical notes on what we are not disclosing and why. No victim records, credentials, campaign extraction steps, reusable access details, or hard-coded secrets are included in the audio version. Next episode, The Repository That Called Home.